everyone. Welcome to another episode. I find myself midday fascinated with this observation of, I've written it in the subtitle, what is the purpose of meaning? And to give the viewers a perspective, pretty much, aside from, let me turn down the music a bit. Aside from just, the regular acknowledgements of life, there are moments where, I was actually saying this to my twin brother the other day, that part of my perception, or pretty much I identify with this view that an eagle can look at the sky, can look at the forest from the sky, and the eagle could sit down on a branch and look at reality that way. So, for this episode, the title that arose, The Great Pilgrimage of Inner Lives into the Outer Realm. It's as if for a moment I wondered, how would I see what is happening on this planet from outside of myself? And what is the role of meaning in all of this? We seek meaning. And meaning is something that when we don't have it, it's as if we're lost. This background music I'm playing is pretty intense, guys. This talk is... I don't know, there just arose this view that a person's life is actually, let's say, divided between an inner life and an outer life, and the purpose, the meaning of life is how this inner life actualizes, how it manifests. If we put a group of people in a room and let's say some sort of event happens, or let's say there's a birthday, okay, this should be a universal example. Imagine it's someone's birthday. We have 4 people in a room, person A, B, C, D. Let's say it's person B's birthday. That moment where person B blows out the candles and all the other people are watching, it's as if something from the inner life of person B is allowed to actualize in the outer life. I mean, there are the basics of survival, there's the whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once we are done with our physiological needs, once we're physically surviving enough, then it comes down to psychological survival. And the psychological survival of the human being is how much its inner vision extends into the outer realm. Guys, this music, the part of me wants to change it to speed up the talk, but at the same time, the ambience it's creating, it's making me question my whole existence. Pretty much on Earth, what is happening? I use the metaphor of a multiplayer online game. When we wake up in the morning, we log into the conscious waking state, conscious life. Now, we appear to ourselves as a character, as a physical character. Now, the physical world, the outer realms, which I call it, It's pretty much the world map. It's as if we're these physical creatures and every person has an inner realm. So right now on Earth, if the population's, let's say, 8 billion, okay, so in the chat section, somebody's saying the music's not loud, so evidently I've been only able to hear it. Okay, in that case, I'll play it from the beginning. Billion creatures in a world, their experience of the world divides into an inner realm and an outer realm. The outer realm is the common map for everybody. That means it's where our inner lives can actualize. If we consider reality to be a physical thing, and by some chance, or maybe it's not even physical from the beginning, then we are ignoring really what is happening to the human experience. That means, imagine there is a theater, there's a theatrical play, let's say Shakespearean play happening, and even though there's two curtains, imagine one of the curtains hasn't been pulled aside, and so the viewers are just seeing half the performance. Right now we're conscious creatures of reality, which is it's kind of incredible, because as much as we are living in life as a physical entity, we are non-physically viewing how we're being a physical entity. It's another way of saying the nature of the mind is that it's an audience of its own creation. Just for the viewers, I'm going to play my favorite song. You know, I'm in a bit of a silly mood, guys. This episode could... Okay, welcome, guys. For anybody who wants to engage the lecture, write your comments in the chat section. At some point, you know, I'll go over all of them. Pretty much like the idea behind this. All these talks I give, they start with an inner vision. The inner vision I had was pretty much, what are human beings doing on this planet? It seemed to me that there was an error in our first attempt at an analysis, or let me say the way our civilization is considering normality. It's as if it's a multidimensional system, and we're all trying to fit into one dimension of it. So the moment something becomes multidimensional, the certainty of the dimensions we have goes away, right? This is just the nature of the realization that there is an unknown variable in the reality where previously we thought all the variables were known. So when it comes to the human being, the viewer, the inner vision, that's the inspiration of this talk, where I'm like, okay, as much as it's a physical life, as much as the journey of the lifetime is physical, there seems to be that it seems to be that the motivation of the physical life is actually the expression of an outer life, right? That means imagine somebody has a personality, has a name, has a backstory in regards to memory, and then on their birthday they blow out a candle. Now, if suddenly there was a situation where the person was not identifying with a subjective inner reality, it would be as if who is blowing the candle of the birthday cake. You see, as much as we're considering we are physical creatures and the meaning of life is just what's a material entity going to do, in actuality, our materialism is to respond to an inner event. Right? So that means right now, me giving this talk, if I was to just acknowledge that it's just sound and matter, there would be no meaning. The meaning is created as if there is an additional viewing dimension to our life force. It's as if, who are we living for? And the question comes down to, what is the nature of this who that we're considering we are? Now, there's different approaches. Some people, let me say it this way. Imagine there's a question asked, and this is at least how I have in this lifetime been exposed to various ways of its response. But imagine there's this question. We have a group of people in a room, random people, and like the question comes, who are you, right? And if we were to wonder about the actuality of an answer, you see, there's some problems where we give an uncertain answer, but just because we gave an answer, it's enough. And then there's some problems where unless the correct answer is found, it's as if there is no advancement. Do you know what I'm saying? There's right now, we are a species, as much as educational systems are giving people giving people wallpaper, To be honest, it's an unknown situation. What we are is unknown. And where we are is unknown. And because these are in actuality unknown, and the reason they're unknown is because we're an experiential entity superior than the technology of language. Right now, if you were to look at a person's life and we were to look at the shape of the dimensions accessible, right, it would be as if, like, right now, the shape of myself is here, the shape of the world is here, but the way the shape of myself is knowing how the world is here, that seems to have an unshaped component, just like the story of Bodhidharma, where Bodhidharma was this patriarch of Buddhism, and he was in some sort of samadhi, sitting down for a long time state, right? And suddenly, in the middle of a night, somebody comes to him, some bewildered individual, some individual with inner turmoil and whatnot, and the person comes to Bodhidharma and says, Bodhidharma, my mind is restless, I haven't slept in so many days, it's like, what does he say? He says, pacify my mind. So this guy comes up to this enlightened guy named Bodhidharma, this enlightened patriarch of Buddhism, and he says, pacify my mind, this restless mind. And Bodhidharma looks at him and he says, okay, you want me to pacify? There's something, barbaric happens, but anyways, something intense happens, and eventually Bodhidharma's like, all right, what is it to the guy, right? Anyways, I'll keep going. he says, Bodhidharma, please pacify my mind. Bodhidharma, this liberated being, he looks at him and he says, bring your mind in front of me and I'll pacify it. As if some guys gone to Bodhidharma and said, hey man, I got problems, my mind has a problem, or there's a problem for my mind I can't solve, help me. Right? And so Bodhidharma is like, okay buddy, you want me to help you? Bring your mind in front of me, I'll take a look at it and I'll help you. Right? And it's in that moment, the moment Bodhidharma says, bring your mind and put it in front of me, this man realizes, he looks for his mind, he can't find it. He looks at Bodhidharma and he says, I can't find my mind. And Bodhidharma says, there, your mind is pacified. What does that mean? That means as if some problems are of abstract origin. And if we truly have the courage to look for the source of anything we see, we will come down to its truth, Pretty much a reverse engineering into the source of anything is a method of truth, I would say, truth discovery. So the reason I'm sharing that Zen story is pretty much that the mind is not an object. We as human beings, we look at life, we realize it's not an object. Now the question comes, what level of contentment does the individual have? I think this is really what divides those people who consider themselves to be esoteric oriented and those people who consider themselves to be exoteric oriented, That means, for example, the analytical philosopher is an exoterist, and exotericist, and the continental philosopher is an esotericist. I don't know if I'm saying these words correctly. But esoteric points to the essence, exoteric is the surface, right? And I'm saying based on the contentment of the individual. Some people are content that when they ask themselves, who am I? It's like, who am I? Okay, the sense of who is a projection of my brain, right? And the person's like, okay, it's as if you ask someone, who am I? They say, I'm the brain. And then you ask them, what is the brain? The person says, the brain is my whole body. It's like my heart. And so then it's as if it's like, okay, and that's it, right? It's as if the person didn't need to have any sort of belief on the dimensions of reality, because in a simple view, they're like, okay, I'm just being an object here, right? And this object is meaninglessly preserved, right? And this concept of truth and illusion is all about, does the context mean anything or not? If the context of reality doesn't mean anything, it's an illusion. If the self is just connected to the relationship of a physical movement, then the physical movement is here before we are, technically. So this idea of self that is trying to be, let's say, a civil human being in civilization, on some level can be attached and connected to the idea of just a mindless physical movement. To be a materialist in an unknown world, it's as if you are worshiping your eyes. You're worshiping a sensation. This is the cool thing, right? I mean, like, people talk about truth, but they don't say it's like, what if truth is an emotion? What if truth is an observation? What if truth is something with an actual substance, right? Like, it's like this, similar to from a theological context. There's some people who believe God is an actual person, like in Vedic thought, I would say they had that view. Like the Bhagavad Gita says, God is like a person beyond the universe. So imagine some dude playing a video game, and we are like the video game. But from a transcendental narrative and context, It's like the person's like, what does my life mean? And it's like God to successfully quality check its invention. I'm telling you, dear viewers, we are a species that, on some level, got invaded by language. Okay? What that means is, like, if you were to consider how many different let's say let's say humanity is an energy, is an energetic, is an intelligence. Okay, let's say that all human beings on the planet are like, okay, human beings are an intelligent movement. Okay, and if we were to wonder about the presence of this intelligence that we're being on this rock in the middle of nowhere, right? It would be as if like, where are the flags of perception planted? In what sort of lands are the flags of our perception or the edges of our mind considered, right? So a person can be like, okay, my physical existence is the edge of the intelligence, right? A person could be my emotional existence, right? And emotional existence means that it's another way of saying in order to have a feeling, there needs to be a comparison of more than oneself. Emotions are another way of saying an awareness of a multidimensional entity. Okay? We are a multidimensional being. For some reason, this creatures on this rock got too convinced by just the games of one dimension. And believe it or not, reality is multidimensional simply because there is parts of reality in the shadows. Okay, it's like we celebrate imagine educational systems in the future. They don't reward a person for their knowledge, but imagine a person gets rewarded by in some sense, what's the term? Imagine somebody in the educational system in the future comes and says, I don't know anything. And imagine that person had more than, let's say 100 PhDs. Okay? Let's say some next level genius, comes and says, I don't know anything, right? And it would be at that moment where I would say in civilization 1.0 currently, we're like, what a fool, he doesn't know anything. But in an advanced civilization, they would say this person has managed to escape the simulations of knowledge of their inner realm. That means it's as if we are so conditioned to feel that we have to 24/7 know what's going on, or whenever we're in the conscious waking state, know what's going on, that we never question if our knowledge is hollow, right? We never question if there were a bunch of creatures that overreacted, that were overwhelmed and overreacted to how there could be nothing at all, how it's so meaningless and bizarre that we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere, on a rock spinning in the middle of nowhere, that it's as if like they had to use language as shelter, right? So imagine there was a storm and people built shelters, so the human species used language, okay? Used storytelling to shelter itself from the chaos of emptiness, right? And extremism usually happens when one feels they're face to face with that fear of emptiness. Okay. Emptiness is very strange. The Buddhists recycled emptiness into enlightenment, but you could say the ignorance of culture recycled it into extreme absence of control. This is personally one of, you can say, Mr. Within's views. That to me, the reason I'm speaking now, like if somebody's like, Mr. Within, why are you speaking? I'll be like, if I want to, like the explanation would be this. Just changing the song, guys. Alright. To continue, the explanation would be that I'm this person who I'm like, okay, if I entertain a purely, not purely, but let's say I entertain first a physical narrative to life, it's as if 4.5 after 4.5 billion years an object appeared as a subject to itself, and it's like this evolutionary opportunity to be a speaking creature with access to technology and let's say nature's memory. It's as if for me speech is one of the things that leads to the advancement of communication, and it's like we have been, compared to how long let's say we're giving a timeline to the universe, the ability for creatures to speak and write is a recent it's like language is a recent acquisition of the species. So the purpose of reality is kind of like use what you have to see where it will lead you. For me, this might be a strange view to some, but I feel that the whole species has a window, this window of, like, let's say, before the year, let's say 2050 or 2100, the species needs to advance communication, because the way civilization structured is that there's the technology and then there's the user of technology, and free will, the idea of free will means user of technology. That means human free will is like equivalent to if somebody was piloting a giant robot moving between, moving in the streets between skyscrapers. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like there's a technology and there's its user. And in ancient times, there were like, there's a body and there's a soul. And this soul, which is the unknown user of the forces at hand, with knowledge just being the observation of how reality is happening. Just like a person would, let's say, try to make, let's say you were a pilot of a giant robot, how would you try to create the settings of that giant robot? It would be one where it would be just like a suit. So the person would raise their hand, the giant robot's hand would raise. Like, there would be no additional controls and, let's say, technique memory sets. Like, it would be a technology that resembles closest its user. We are right now, if civilization poetically can be seen as a technology, we are users of a technology that are still smarter in the sense of having access to more dimensions than the technology we're building. Sometimes I find it that it's to consider realities just one place is also an extremist view. That means the idea of that there is just the world, it seems to me that it's an extremism. Right? Extremism has difference in manifestation, right? Like an extreme nihilist would be someone who believes nothing is nothing. Do you know? So pure, like, extreme nihilism would be the belief in something. Actually, hilariously, maybe it's the only field where it's extreme becomes the opposite. Because if nothing is nothing, that means there's only been something, right? Honestly, what I'm trying to convey or communicate is that I'm a human being that has realized there is a linguistic dimension to reality, and it's as if, as much as we are creatures on a rock called Earth, we are also creatures in a subjective inner realm where the stories of our lives can connect, can communicate. You see, it's like a creature noticed it's being a physical entity, but then it noticed that it's controlling the physical entity, so it realized there is a space beyond just the physical entity, and this is the activation of the mind. It's pretty much, I call it the subjective evolution, you know. I'm asking myself pretty much, as let's say a scholar of the realm, how much of reality is accessible, and what do we do with the inaccessible parts of our lives, right? Because if we are to truly find a meaning to our life, or for meaning to have a purpose, it's really an outcome orientation, right? That means what purpose means is that where is something heading? What is it's like if it was a ship, it's like where's the captain sailing, you know? And what I'm realizing is that 2022, I noticed it in 2020, but I'll say it this way, that the meaning of life is no longer to just be a physical creature. The meaning of life has become to be true to the dimensions that are accessible of reality. That means, imagine, Earth is like a room in the cosmos of this cosmic mansion. Earth is a room of a cosmic mansion, imagine. And it's as if, imagine we've gone to, let's say I think, I forget the name of it, but we sent something to Venus, I think. But anyways, let's say we colonize Mars, right? And that would be like another room. Now imagine somebody who's gone to Mars and sees a colony, comes back to Earth, right? And it's as if, what I'm trying to say is that we should have an honesty to the complete being, complete intelligent entity we're being, rather than just to narrow the dimensions of reality to a few stories that suffices. It's as if it's like, what was my lifetime about? I was a person in a, chapter of history, then what else though, right? And I find it that we still have a privilege. It's as if the species is an early bird into a realization. Or let me say it like, there could be people right now, I consider anybody who has this state as a true friend, right? But for me, the view is, I'm like, okay, for how long are we going to identify as just humans on Earth? Like, is that it till the end of time? Or could it be that we usher ourselves in the era of, let's say, the interstellar human being? Do you know? Where are we drawing the limits? And normality is a limit. The normal is limited. This is the nature of it. It's not the purest state. It's as if is it more pure for a creature to just lock itself down in one ideology and be like, this is reality? Or is it more pure that the being is like, okay, the known and the unknown is kind of part of the dualistic nature of reality. Till the end of time, there will be stuff unknown, and because stuff is unknown, knowledge is infinite. And because we have started off as the small and the big. The small and the big is like, it's like We realized we could never know, so we started acting like we can know. But when we come back to this realization that there's too many unknown variables, we have to redefine the idea of the human being into an unknown being again. Alright, guys. It's just what I'm trying to say. When I give these talks, I feel like a sculptor. It's like I say something and then I'm resculpting it until I'm satisfied with it. I think for this episode there's a lot of resculpting to do. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that the human being is a multidimensional being. Or let's say if the human being was a multidimensional being, we would need to completely restructure the story of what is the meaning of life. When I look at lesser species like, let's say, birds and squirrels, they're just playing their part in nature. They are just unconsciously being conscious. But the human being is consciously being conscious. For the human being to just barricade itself into how life is just a story is an inefficient way to live, I think about civilization now, and I think about bringing in the dimension of time, that there's a past, there's a present, there's a future. So I think about the past of civilization, and we were animals in the forest. I think about the present of civilization. We are creatures in a sort of acting and language-oriented game. To be honest, to be a human being is to be a conscious performer in the realm, based on the accepted beliefs. We have this view that, you know what it is? It's like intelligence for civilization 1.0 is like how well you acted inside an illusion. I think about the future of civilization, and I think about all the stuff that is the blind spots of the species. They will be uncovered. It's not going to be like ultimate realization of everything, but in the future what's going to happen is that the species is going to try out all modes of perception. Just like they say there's endless possibilities, somebody in the chat section, let me read that comment. Somebody in the chat section says, we're not creatures, we're beings. We don't live in a particular set. There's endless possibilities, which we call reality. Right. So now what do we do with these endless possibilities? It's as if could you imagine a world where all the world leaders were like, wait a minute, Could the meaning of life be more than just survival? In the future, they're going to care about the quality of human experience. All governments are going to be like this global tourist agency who's making sure every human being that is manifested in this realm is having a good quality of a high quality of an access to the possibilities of life. What's ultimately going to happen is collective mindhood. We're at the beginning of the era of collective mindhood. If somebody was like Mr.Within, what's an example of a collective technology? I would say it's like language. Language was like the prototype for what cyberspace is going to be in the future. It's like we're dissolving the barriers between the dimension of what is the inner and the outer. Cyberspace is going to be another way of saying like a person in the future can live in everybody's mind while being physically alive, The future is going to go towards the psychology merging, right? It's like the challenge of freedom. Imagine there's a house party, and there's so many people in the house party that they're all it's so crowded and nobody has room to move. Okay, now imagine they turn on a song and they're like, okay, everybody dance in a crowded room, and you begin to see those people who seek freedom, they are pushing people aside to just be able to dance. But in reality, the species can have a different response, right? It's like rather than us being in a crowded room where our freedoms are going to impinge upon one another, their actualization, what if in some sense we realize there's multiple rooms? And really what a good way to, I would say, structure civilization, like I'm sure in the future somebody who is a gamer is going to get into like high office, okay? And and the structure of reality is going to tune into more cyberspace. We are literally in that phase where the information age, we're stepping into our minds technologically. In the future, I'll give it 400 years, there's going to be human beings that are not, they're going to get bored of being an individual and they're going to go become collective entities, But the hilarious thing is that naturally, before we are a persona, we are actually a collective entity. So as much as I'm giving these talks in the outer realms for people to listen, it's this hilarious thing where it's like in another dimension of reality, even surpassing Plato's world of forms, the geometrical dimension. It's like the state where energy doesn't have a personality, yet the intelligence of every moment of it is connected. Those yogis who would sit in caves and they would go into these long-term samadhis, it's as if they had the privilege in the lifetime for their collective life to occur. For their collective life to be consciously experienced. I've experienced it a couple times. I've experienced it in moments where I just, how would I say it? It's as if there's no idea of me. I am the whole moment that's being, and how the whole moment moves is being observed effortlessly. We've built a civilization where it requires a lot of effort for the inner realm to extend out into the outer realms. The great pilgrimage of inner lives into the outer realm or outer world. It's literally like why our personalities are existing. We are expressive creatures. The nature of our minds are observer-like. Because the nature of our minds are observer-like, it's as if a conclusion, an instantaneous conclusion on what the meaning of life is how what we're doing is being. It's as if in the future they're not going to be afraid of dehumanization. 2022 right now, I would say the species is still afraid of dehumanization, right? Because there is such an obsession on self to be clarified only through known variables. It's as if there's unknown, there's question marks in life, and imagine we just connect ourselves to an exclamation point. It's kind of cool. It's like from one level I'm like, okay, what am I not seeing? And then I'm going like, what is the species not seeing? And then I think about it, what is the universe not seeing? And it's as if, as much as the known physical possibility of life is authorized, the unknown non-physical possibility of life is also authorized. It's like it's codependent. So it's like the only way I know I'm being a mind right now is based on the body, right? Or the only way I know I'm being a body is because there's the consciousness that's found, looking out through my eyes, as the mind. And if I identify as a mind, which is not an object, it's as if we're all actually, by identifying with a mind, are identifying with a non-physical space. There's a lot of bizarre concepts in reality, and the concept of God is just one that it's in the spotlight that's being scrutinized, It's as if God was an inconceivable being, right? And imagine somebody believed in an inconceivable creator of the universe. Like that's a kind of like beyond our idea, right? But now we could also say the belief in space, the belief in the concept of emptiness. This whole time we have been treating ourselves as alive, right? But we don't know what life is. Some non-physical viewer is viewing through the body, and before the free will actualizes as the movement of a physical entity, behind the eyes of the person, possibilities of life are happening. It's as if for ideas that we can relate, to physical reality, it's like we call logical, but ideas that we cannot relate to physical reality become illogical, right? I'm trying to tell people that this whole time that people have thought that their subjective beliefs can capture all of reality, it has not been the case. It's more like a multidimensional dynamic system where the human being cannot just be the idea of one moment of their life. and to find the honesty that marches truth towards a worthy truth, or an honesty that feels it is worthy of truth. As a multidimensional being, the freedom of self is beyond one dimension. That means who has a judgment on their self or anything, there is more to the ability of your judgment. I think the meaning of life really is, what do we do with what we don't know? And should the species stay in its fragmented language cave, right? Should we have our species just, stay in the walls of language, or on some, or what does the species deserve? It's as if, do we deserve a successful illusion? Is that what the creature on this rock deserves, or is it that the cosmos calls to us beyond our beliefs? It's as if the original Earth is calling everybody, towards it from all the simulations of Earth. The species deserves its most advanced possibility. That's what I'm trying to say, right? And the most advanced state of being is not a linguistic photograph. So you know what it is? It's like this cool thing where I am seeing civilization as if it went into a dead-end system, or let me say it this way. Imagine the species, walked the wrong way, and it's going to reach the consequence of the wrong way it walked, and then it's going to, in some sense, step back and then step forward differently. You know what it is? Some people feel there's even from a spiritual context, it's as if, like, how would I say? Some people feel there's a sort of genetical program that's surviving on the surface of the earth endlessly, right? That means, let's say, a meteor or something hits Earth, and only bacteria survives, and the creaturehood begins again from that level, let's say. My view, the view I have on this is like, okay, the world, the experience of the world is a multidimensional event. Physical reality is one side of the coin of what is, let's say, going on here. If a human being is identifying with a physical body, and they're identifying with a non-physical mind or awareness, it's as if death only exists to 50% of us, or only one dimension. There's the idea of death. But there's also the idea of transcendence, and I think this is the point. There's a reason. I shouldn't say there's a reason, but I should say, in my view, The reason, the true nature of human intelligence is actually not just a physical phenomenon, is because there needs to come an identification that the user of technology is not the technology. That means if everybody was born, imagine everybody, was in a world where everybody was wearing an Iron Man suit. It would be as if Tony Stark opening his eyes, inside the Iron Man suit, and then going in front of a mirror and be like, who am I? And then he sees the Iron Man suit in the mirror, but he doesn't realize it's an Iron Man suit. He thinks the Iron Man suit is him. And imagine Tony Stark thinking that he's the Iron Man suit, goes into the world, and imagine suddenly like somebody pushes one Iron Man suit, pushes another Iron Man suit, and the person falls down, and they, for some reason, by identifying with the Iron Man suit, consider pain, right? But imagine Tony Stark suddenly steps out of the Iron Man suit and realizes he was never the Iron Man suit. I find it's a similar scenario when it comes to what may happen. I am just saying may, as in like this might happen, that we experience what it's like to step out the Iron Man suit that was our attachment to perception. That means it's like all the ideas arising now, we say it's like the human, right? Like when a human being speaks, we're like, okay, those are human ideas. But I'm saying if the person suddenly realized intelligence is a strange multidimensional freedom that has found freedom not just with the known variables but with the unknown variables. Freedom from, let's say, freedom from simulated knowledge is a discovery of the unknown. That means imagine you were somebody who knew everything on the planet. It's like, what would you become fascinated with? Imagine all the greatest teachers, ever. They gave you their teaching. Imagine you had, learned everything there was about this world, and your mind was in some sense like everything in it. You knew everything, right? It's like, what does somebody who knows everything do? They realize that there is a viewing force that surpasses the shape and the image of certainty that the knowledge creates. And we revert back to this realization that life is not happening as a known conscious subject when we're awake. It's happening as if we are a known conscious entity, and then suddenly an unconscious space where the conscious entity is moving in, right? So believe it or not, it's like the consciousness became conscious of its subconscious, and in the subconscious of man's mind there is pure ideological freedom. When I say pure ideological freedom, that means you realize you're not a concept as an entity. And so the question comes, okay, if I'm not a physical entity, if I'm not a physical being, then what am I being? Right? This question truly comes, right? Like this is why they say mysticism is not for the faint of heart. Why? Because it's world shifting. The person's like, okay, where does the edge of my perception go? And the edge of the perception goes, and how the past is creating familiarity with the present, even though there's a whole future agenda of events that will take place regardless of human thought. It's as if, let me tell you, before there's like, let's say, extraterrestrials who land on Earth and they shake hands with like human leadership, it's going to be like, hey, extraterrestrials are waiting to see how much of a high IQ species our species is. And what I mean by this is like, how smart is our species that before making contact with the extraterrestrial noticed extraterrestrial Because anything that is different from us, we, in some sense, barricade ourselves from. You know? I could tell you human psychology is like really, the movement of a sword and shield. Right? That means back in the day, warriors had a sword and shield. Now we have a mind, right? We have questions and answers, right? Questions are in some sense like the sword. They break realities, right? Answers, they're like a shield. They defend the reality. Imagine somebody does something and somebody comes up to that person and says, it's like, that's not true. Right? And so the person has, I'm trying to explain the sword and shield modality where the mind can choose to hold on to its inner realm, its inner world, and or it can choose to get influenced by the outer world. Right? It's all about like where the attention wants to stand. There's moments where my attention stands in the outer realms, and I would say I become a pure materialist. That means it's like my outer realms are enough to be the moment, but then there's moments where the questions and mysteries of life in the moment kind of take me to a point where I'm like, how have I accepted an answer of a mind where from the beginning of my life it's generation, reality regeneration. The mind is constantly regenerating reality. It's a mechanism. That's the bizarre thing, right? People think like the mind can't be pinpointed because it's not an object. Like there's truth in that, but like I would also say, right, aside from that point, that it's like we may not know how the soul looks like, but in seeing how the soul is moving, we can know that the way it's moving, right? So it's like reality is a way of discovering your unknown nature. The purpose of life for a squirrel or a bird is just to play along with the biological instructions as if genetics is the king, right? A genetical program is content with just its being, right? But the human being is, first of all, again, I'll point to this, that it's like the purpose of lesser species are to accept their world. The purpose of greater species are to go beyond their world. That's what we're missing in the educational system, inspiration towards the unknown, how much unknown there is, rather than the knowledge being enough. Because any act of mind is connected to a mechanism of how much energy is real, how much effort there is based on energy. And honestly, endless novels can be written, as a response to the question, what is it like being in an unknown world? The mind is so powerful in taking the inspiration of shape from present reality and to use it in accordance with, it's like an emotion. So in front of our eyes, let's say we have access to physical reality. Behind our eyes, we have access to subjective reality plus an emotional reality. That means there's been times where I've had a judgment and I've questioned, how did my judgment occur, right? And then I realized the judgment went back to a memory of a self that in that moment thought that reality was true. Because to have value on anything is like taking your inner realm seriously. We say we have minds, but we don't know how to use them or what they are. We don't know if the secrets source of energy is like a Russian doll, or like an onion. There's so many spheres of worldhood, and the ancient yogis would say treat life as a dream and detach yourself from this dream. That means if I was truly to be a yogi, right, I would have to renounce everything with the fearlessness that whatever is to come is okay, right? But for me, I chose that as long as I am manifest as a human being, to create, it's like the greatest and the advanced civilization is the greatest invention of all inventions. All inventions are inventors are like, you could say, timeless beings that have no, how would I say it? It's like you see something in the inner realms that is not in the outer realms yet, and you wonder what to do with it. That's really it. I'm seeing the possibility of an advanced civilization on Earth, but I don't know what to do with it. I'm like, okay, let's get started. Not let's start, but I'll say like the origin of this Mr.Within's gift was me just trusting an unknown world, trusting an unknown where it's like you reach the edge of knowledge and the unknown is left, and to comprehend the unknown is not ideological at its core. What it is that it's experiential. It's as if, like at the end of the physical lifetime, there is no body to identify with, there is no subjects to identify with, and if you have renounced the world, then there's no world to identify with. So emptiness is like infinity's potential in hiding, right? We're gonna get bored of inferiority as a species and just seek our superior state. That's the advanced civilization. As someone talking about an advanced civilization, I feel like, do we love the future or do we not? For some people, the future is a source of suffering, a source of anxiety, fear, but could the future be a source of honor, the greatest type of honor, right? The honor of a species that went through the dark ages of, let's say, blind ideological worship, and it reached a certain point where to be a human being is like an unknown possibility of reality. There's a hidden honor to the archetype of our nature that it's not being acknowledged, but if it was to be acknowledged, right? If I'm someone who's, maybe I could be like, one of the few people on this planet, I think that's not too bold of a claim, that has come up with a strategy for how the species can function. But it's a strategy, it's not something you could worship, or, you know what I'm saying? That means I wondered, okay, what is the nature of truth beyond the stories we tell? And I realized the truest thing about life is how there is an opportunity for conscious experience to directly know itself. To be a human being and to not wonder about how the edge of the world is the origin of your mind is like, it's as if you didn't get to see the world. Imagine someone who traveled everywhere, all around the planet, and they're like, okay, I got to see as much as possible, everything that was possible. But imagine they didn't see the inner earth. They didn't see who the actors of the meaning of everything is, right? It's more like from a photo, we are realizing it's a film. it's dynamic. You can't measure something that its dynamism is random. You know? You know, it's like the mystery of consciousness and why the species has had a trouble measuring it. Because we're like, to measure consciousness is like measuring who's putting in the measurement. To define consciousness is like defining the one who's choosing it's like defining the definer. It's strangely, paradoxically meaningless. You know. It's equivalent to the fascination of wondering about a god beyond reality, but that god not being any archetype. As if imagine the gods of language were fingers pointing to the god of experience. The species needs to have the humility. We're just creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and at the same time, the complex honor, rather than just the simple humility of that, having the complex honor of being like an opportunity has been provided. The fact that we exist out of all the conceptual positions that can exist, that means imagine, that means this is conversations that really spiritual people have, you know? It's as if like, let's say a spiritual person tells another spiritual person a story, right? And it's as if like, it would be as if like, did you hear that story that there were 3 souls and they wanted to incarnate but only one of them could? Like, it would be like, do you see what I'm saying? The potential of our existence, like we have access to existential projective movement, right? People don't realize the value of this. The destiny of the human species is to see how advanced it is. That's it. Advancement means discovery of the nature of perception, how we're perceiving things, right? And everybody has an inner life, and their inner life is happening in their inner universe. You know? Some even call it innerverse, right? Right now, this talk I'm giving, it's like, sure, it's live streaming the physical moment, like the balcony I'm on and all the other sounds and the sound of my voice, but it's as if my voice is trying to mimic my inner realms. It's as if we all are access to a moment of sight where change occurs. You know, just like that feeling of an astronaut floating in a space station. For me, realizing beyond how I'm a subject was equivalent to that. So if somebody says, Mr.Within, are you enlightened or not? I'll be like, I don't know, I just feel like I am floating above the language that had to be the world. Do you know? And it's like the simple state, you know, for me, an advanced human being, you know, when an advanced civilization happens, when all the members of civilization have found themselves capable to access the spectrum of the intensities of selfhood. What that means is to be an advanced human being is like a human being that is comfortable with the simple and is also comfortable with the complex, not emotionally, but in a way of acknowledgement of the outcome of consequence, right? Because the major fear that rules people's lives is like, okay, what's gonna happen if I do something, right? Like, what is fear? It's like absence, right? It's like we're creatures so full of ourselves that we have, you know, defined our absence as death, you know? life and death, it's a duality. That means if I choose to be a dualistic entity, I can die and I was born. If I choose to perceive from a presence of the moment, that I am the whole moment rather than a part of it. There comes this freedom that I have been fearing the space where everything that happens in. And that after some point, like, that fear goes away and you stare out of your body poetically as no longer even a selfless creature, a being that has realized if language is untouched, it is ultimately all accessible, but at the same time, there is no stress. It's as if the idea we have of ourselves in the morning when we wake up is like a sieve, right? It's a sieve that we feel, right? And all the experiences throughout the day are being filtered through that sieve. Poet Rumi 700 years ago, he says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a place. I will meet you there. And when the soul sits on that grassland, the world is too full to talk about. There are states of being that are not conditional, and then there's states of being that are conditional. Speech and the use of the technology of language is conditional. And what a state is the conscious experience of the moment. We don't have, like, in Vedanta, there's this idea of the third eye, right? And people think the third eye's on their forehead, and that makes me chuckle. Like, let me tell you why, right? Because to me, the mind, the sight of our inner realms. That means when we close our eyes and we can visualize something or remember something or see something, that's the third eye. The mind's sight, which is the space, the awareness of all that's in the space in the moment, is the third sight. Okay? That means it's not an eye, right? Some people's obsession with the pineal gland, let me tell you, if the pineal gland needed to have a representation in a subtler reality, it would be equivalent to like a projector. So people don't realize that when we visualize something, we're actually stepping out from the Iron Man suit of the present moment into the Iron Man suit of that memory where, there was a value. So literally an attributeless attention is body jumping between its attention going more on how it's a subject and then going more on how it's an object. Hilariously, when I give these talks, it's as if like I'm waiting for a concert, but then I'm the one who's giving it. I don't know, reality is the reason it's like at the moment it's a changing world. Like, what do we believe in? Imagine people in the future, they're like, I was tired of following various ideological systems, so I just believe in changes. Whatever truth it is, it's going to change. Imagine there's people fighting over, extreme ideas, and then they're like, bring in the changes, and the changes goes there, and it's like, hey guys, have you noticed everything changes? Imagine we brought world peace with that sentence, the sentence that would destroy any sort of ideological possession. Have you noticed the world changing? The inner realms are projected and they could be updated, right? In a cyberpunk, cyberspace vibe, it would be as if like every person's belief systems is like is the current patch, right, of reality where they've accepted, and there's new patches to reality coming, right? So in nature, this is why I'm saying true spiritual people, they're actually people who have noticed that what the spirit is that it cannot be, by its definition, an object or a subject, but it is the mover of the object and subject. That means the question, who am I, leads to this view where I'm like, okay, I am the mover of this moment, but then the question comes, what is the mover of the moment based on? And so if I go back to ideology, it's incomplete. You know, I'm like this person who has realized the knowledge of the modern world. It's still as if we don't have the tools to discover actual reality yet. We are experiential movements. Like that to me is fascinating. That it's not just people with names moving around here. It's like unknown beings with their potentials being based on how they activate their attention. For me, if somebody, I've decided to narrow out, excuse me. I've decided to narrow out my views to this, that the greatest advice is, what does the most how much advancement does this species deserve, or you as a human being listening to me right now? Forget problem solving of problems defined by the past. Come, bring your attention to the present and just notice that we are history being live streamed. Existence is a historic event. It's the start of it. And should we be creatures that fear the edge of our existence? Or should we be creatures that try to comprehend the nature of reality by pretty much using what's accessible, as if the whole species was stranded on an island, but it's a galactic island, an island called Earth, right? It's as if how would we use everything we have to, in some sense, go beyond? You know, I think I need to write a book called Beyond the Origin of Beyondism. The beyond is the most powerful force. That means, imagine, okay, I'll create a hilarious story here. Imagine again, two spiritual people are talking. And one spiritual person goes to the other spiritual person and says, the other day, you know, my extraterrestrial spirit guides, you know, told me that, you know, something's gonna happen on Earth. And imagine the other spiritual person says, it's like, no way, you know, the other day my greater self is the whole cosmos knew what was gonna happen. Do you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is, like, once we have experienced the technology of language, the self-discovery of what is actually here, it's like the greatest problem for everybody to solve. For the human species, you know, it believes that you need to confront your fears, and the fear of the human mind is the unknown. But the unknown is also the destiny of knowledge. So everything we know, it's all leading to an unknown moment. That's the beautiful thing about life. That means if we forget the idea, imagine the idea of death never existed. And it was just that we were like, okay, somebody's going to enter the unknown, somebody's going to enter the known physically. You know? The quality of our minds is dependent on the context, the ultimate context we as an ego, the that can fly in the sky, lands on that branch. What is really happening on Earth is that, let's say, aside from 8 billion physical creatures surviving, there is something within all these creatures that its motivations are shifting beyond physical expectation to now emotional expectation. Right? That means this is something where I think maybe a lot of people don't consider what emotions they expect. Like somebody who seeks happiness, it could be that they just have an expectation of having that emotion, not realizing happiness is a dualistic idea, never found if the moment is identified with the opposite. You see, duality is a loop. This is what they don't tell you. The moment you get into the good and evil game, right, it's as if you're looping what's evil, what's good, what's evil, and not realizing there is 8 billion brains that are responding to reality and simulating its completeness. You see, the brain is an attempt of remembrance beyond limit. The brain is that part of the universe that can move the universe. You see, like all the organs of the body, like sure, I understand the lungs, the heart, but what the brain is doing, we're like, no way, right? It's like a meaningless existence evolved to generate itself with advanced, sophisticated consciousness. Like, what is up with that, right? So this begs the question: was there an otherworldly interference? That means is what we think terrestrial life actually an extraterrestrial influence? It's as if was there poetically a divine intervention, something beyond the dimensions of reality engaging with reality. Imagine two people in an arcade, they're playing a game, right? A 2-player game, but only one of them sat down first and is playing the game. So somebody has started a solo game. And then imagine suddenly, and imagine we as people, right? We are like, how would I say it? Imagine we are the video game, and there's the video game is 2 players and 1 player has come in. There's one god to reality, right? Or there's one version of reality. And then suddenly the second player comes into the game and we suddenly see that our version of reality is not the only reality. So what I'm trying to say is that the species needs to have a sort of ultimate humility of recognizing that nature is more than a self-defining regeneration. As if we are piloting as an unknown attention, a knowable, a known body in a knowable world. Right? It's like an unknown mover. The complete mover. So all those people who are seeking spirituality, you're going to come down to this realization, okay, it's the living unknown. That means it's like the truth. When I say the truth is the unknown, it is the unknown. The unknown is the unknown, is the ultimate ideological position of knowledge. Because really, everybody has to believe in the same things in order to access their reality. So we've reached the point where I would say, rather than just having a singular definition, that means anybody who's hearing me, try this out. Live one day maturity of a species that's just in a singular definition, you know. We can have a view right now, let's say, where we're like, okay, human beings are moving themselves. We could have this view, like, let's say the human being is an evolutionary animal. We can have this view that the human being is like an extraterrestrial force on Earth. You know, the reason that pain and pleasure could even be an acknowledgement of a creature, right? The pleasure is a suggestion of what is there more. And so reality is kind of like, are you putting the known in, like, how would I say it? Imagine we have pain, pleasure, we have known, unknown, and do we kind of, okay, let me, we got the known path. This is something I need to draw out, actually. So if viewers look at the screen, I brought out the notepad. I'm going to show you what I was trying to say. I was saying we have the duality of the unknown and the known. The unknown and the known, and we have the duality of, let's say, good, and we have, was it good and evil? Oh, sorry, not good and evil. What am I saying? We have the notion of the duality of pain and pleasure. Okay? So these two dualities. Okay? So we can create a sort of view where we come and say unknown. Let's say pain. And then we come and say known pain. And we come here and we say unknown pleasure, unknown pain. There we go. Unknown pain, we have fear as a response. Known pain is also fear. I messed this up, guys. Let me just do it again. Alright. one of those where do I go with this now moments. Pretty much the known and the unknown, the most important duality to consider. Or let me find another duality. Or whatever. Ecstasy, revenants. Unknown fear, known pleasure, known fear. Known fear, we have anxiety, we have fear. Known pleasure, we consider happiness, joy. I shouldn't say awe. I should put awe here. Happiness, joy, peace. Let's say, I shouldn't say peace. Happiness, joy, contentment. When it comes to the unknown fear, here, a theological way I could write it is like this. This is the biggest mistake of the species, where its fear of the unknown makes its mind, consider to get possessed by one side of the spectrum. To be an unknown being means it's like the same feeling you get as if everything that's happening in the moment you are seeing for the first time. The advancement of a civilization is dependent to the strategy the conscious members of civilization take towards, the fear of what will happen. Like, when somebody in the chat section earlier said it's like we're a being with infinite possibilities. Like, those infinite possibilities include the worst possibilities as well. Really, it's kind of like, what is the behavior of 8 billion creatures in a system called civilization leading to? And if the ratio of our like right now, how we judge people based on age, right? We could also have this judgment based on those people who identify with the past, those identify with the present, and those identify with the future. That means human beings are all living in a world, but where that world is going is dependent to where your attention has connected to. That means any person that is moving on this planet, the consciousness has a conclusion on reality, and that's where the confidence for movement comes. I have this conclusion that, you know, out of all my ancestors, being the first one to be a podcaster, you know, at the same time being in an unknown world with a species that has an incredible potential of a future that's waiting to be activated. Like, for me, I'm like, okay, what have I been doing? Just focusing on how I'm being a self in a world, but how has the world been, in some sense? How have I been a world in the self? And in that world, the self-identification is not just with one person. That means in the future, human beings are going to be so advanced, they're going to have the confidence of, they're going to know what they are in deeper ways than we are knowing now. The reverence that a person, let's say, escaping a simulation, a cyberspace simulation, and finding the original Earth, that is like a superior, that's a state, there's a depth to the soul of that perception that in some sense it's like not accessible now. Really, what are we convinced by in a changing world? That's the question. For me, it feels like there is, to think that it's an all-you-can-eat buffet of beliefs is not the efficient approach, and really what it is, how would I say it? It's like the person has to be like, if life's gonna end, what is the value of its beginning, right? And the value of its beginning is what it leads to. So it's like right now people are living just the lives of their person, their name and personality, but in the future you're gonna have the life of your species. That means this whole time, you know, it's like people say they say how are you doing all the time to each other, but nobody wonders about how the species is doing. You know. It's too easy to believe that we are a mistake in the cosmos, you know. It's too easy to see the imperfect, and contentment with imperfection is really easy because there's nothing that can happen, right? So it would be as if like the person sees like, I don't know, let's say the person sees that leaves are colored green, and it's as if like, rather than debate why, it's one of those instantly accepted imperfections. So much of life is just an unknown attention, perceiving space, substance, shape, and color. That's what life is, if you were to kind of just observe its dimensions. It's really that we're a shape, we are a changing shape inside a changing shape, and in one moment of this dynamic change we want to be like, okay, what is everything? We're too advanced to be a creature that is content with just a snapshot photo of reality. I would say, to go back to the title, what a pilgrimage is like a journey, right? And what the title really means is that how is the attention that's starting first in your own inner universe journeying out beyond into the outerverse? What is the journey from the innerverse to the outerverse? That means imagine this whole time like the experience of human life we've had is just the surface of the ocean. We don't know its depths yet. We don't know how much of an advanced being the human being can become. I'm just fascinated the species is using the past to differentiate itself with itself and then fighting over it, right? That means if the leaders of all nations had a value for the human being, right, that cared for the future of the human being, this is really the tragedy in politics, right, that anybody who is not a futurist should not enter the politics. That means right now in political debates you see two politicians talking about their policies, but imagine a politician comes and talks about their policies for the next 1,000 years of how much their contribution in leadership is going to be. What I'm trying to say, it's like it's the depth of the vision we're looking for, but when the game is played only on the surface, we avoid it. We never get a chance to see it, right? And to be human, a human being means as if like I don't know how to say it, but it's as if like we can only care for a world that is truly honorable. And honor means that the human condition is not ignored just because our local environment is engaging. You see, it's like life is not just something physical you gotta do. Life is like wondering how that physical observation of it is actually a non-physical event identified as mind, right? Like we have minds right now. We're being minds, but we're being only minds that are content with just the body. Like it's is that enough? Go to what moves in our eyes, the winds of life that direct evolution. It's very fascinating when a person has a relationship with their unknown life. It's as if their known life becomes a bit transparent. What I'm trying to say is, dear human beings, dear humanity, dear destiny of humanity, the potential for an advanced effort. That means imagine, the universe shouted advance, and suddenly everybody on the planet unlocked their true genius and started contributing to this grand vision of an advanced civilization. Fearlessly and efficiently, going into the future. You see, we seek freedom, but the question is, how much do we have it before we're in charge of freedom? And the ultimate freedom is just Earth is more, if in order for Earth to be a decent place for the human mind, it must be capable of acknowledging the complex dimensions of its own creation. That means the greatest government is going to be equivalent to the planetary mind. It's as if the planet had a mind, that would be the greatest government association. That means imagine there's the UN and then there's the PM, right? The planetary mind, And it's as if everybody after they've made a political decision, the political decision is being filtered through a moral lens, and it's also being filtered through an environmental lens. You see, because the consequence of decisions, important decisions, is that they begin shaping reality. And anything that shapes reality, its source can be discovered. That means right now there's a coffee cup, or let me say it this way, the inspiration of its source can be discovered. Right now I'm seeing this coffee cup, the company that made this coffee cup is like they are the inspiration for the shape I am seeing, right? But now if we were to wonder about the shapes of reality, I will honestly say at heart I am kind of like, there's like the mad scientist, and I see myself as a sort of peaceful designer. There, on some level, when you realize reality is not just physical, violence becomes a bit illogical. Intensity is okay, but I'm telling you, something about the human being is like there's an advanced version, advanced way it can live, and it's not living. That's like, the purpose of this podcast to some degree, make the species realize the boundaries of our reality are set by our memories, which are an incomplete rendition of reality. Our certainty, it's like, how can we be certain in a changing, unknown world? Like, how can I be an expert, in a changing, unknown world, right? And the only way is how much you observe the change. So it's, in some sense, it's a direct experiential observance, which becomes the source of ideological knowledge. For me, a very beautiful sentence is, how has someone's eyes opened? Or how does a person's eyes open? Right? When my, let's say, two biological eyes open, it's just, the physical reality. But when my mind's eye wakes up, and sometimes my mind's eye, let's say, my third sight is open before I wake up. So that means it's like in the dream I'm conscious it's the morning and I'm in my bed, and so it's as if like my mind's awake before my body wakes up. And usually in those moments I have a lot of energy to wake up. It's the strange thing where it's like your mind, consciousness, it's like reboots through the ideological realms, and then in some sense you wake up in the day and it's already active, right? It's like there's a knowing of like it's like before a person woke up, they were waking up. It's like that vision. Something within us is not an object, but it's a subject that is attached through the desire of what it wants in the objective world, that in some sense it has to acknowledge itself. It's just about individualism being the supreme filter of human nature, or collectivism being the supreme filter of human nature. For me, I realize if we can have a species that is not afraid of the simple or the complex, but can comfortably understand it, right? And we have a species, that is comfortable acknowledging the known and the unknown, right? It's as if like, I'm telling you, it's like we're multidimensional, just like a lion with the wool of a sheep. We are like multidimensional beings that are dressing ourselves in accordance to just one dimension. Like, who are we kidding? The human being it's an advanced event of nature. We're the most advanced thing going on in this universal sector, right? It's not like it's like all the neighboring civilizations moved out of Earth. We stayed. On how much you're attached with the content of the moment. Usually an emotional person is someone who their inner realms have become synonymous with the outer realms, right? When their inner realms have become synonymous in their outer realms, you change something, there's emotions pouring, right? Like when you look at young children, right? Their inner realms are synonymous with the outer realms, and if they lived in a happy vibe, right, that child, the moment it sees something unhappy, it's because it's still treating that what it sees is what is there. Do you know? Children have they're such advanced users of the inner realms, and which surmounts to imagination, right? It's like the reason is because they trust their world. That means imagination unlocks for someone who has trusted at least some dimension of reality. For me, I trust that which is looking out through my eyes, and because its nature is unknown, no object or subject can touch it. It's as if like the body dies, the mind may fade, but that which is aware they were here is untouchable here. Right? So to me, it's like a part of me can born and die. A part of me can be infinite, but there's a part of me that is not content-based. It's just presence, and what presence means is how simplicity resolved complex wars, you know. I think I should give a talk in the future called How to Stop All Wars at Once. And if in a sentence, if I would tell people what it would be about, it would be like how freedom means we can look differently at the moment. That's what freedom is. Somebody who's suffering, they're suffering because of a sense of self, right? But the nature of reality is that when you don't fear the unknown, it can consciously be a part of your life, right? The species' task, metaphysically, is just to be as honest as it can. Be able to be simply present. And from that simple presence, it will be conscious enough to notice anything, how complexity arrives in the moment. On some level, sure, I'm someone speaking, but on another level, I am a viewer, an unknown viewer of the moment. And these words, their inspiration is based on the energy that I have now. Right? It's as if like it's the eyes of an energetic entity that after recognizing the entity of language has come to this conclusion that okay, the truth beyond language is there's an equal sign to that between the advancement of the species. So it's as if for me the most spiritual thing is how a species advances in the void before it disappears, or what else can do before it transitions, right? Anything that enters the unconscious is equivalent to dead, right, ideologically. So when a person sleeps, it's like the idea of them is not there. But when a person is awake, we're like, okay, that person knows they're being a person, the idea of them is there, right? Now let's say a human being through some sort of mystical moment comes into this realization that, whoa, the reality I was so certain of is not the ultimate reality. And so it's as if, what do we do with that moment where the unknown has made its way through all dimensions of perception? That means we wondered about the infinity's destiny, and the unknown was the revelation keeper. So it's more like this is excuse me, this is something also I think in shamanism it's a huge thing. Like you hear these stories in the Amazons of these ayahuasca ceremonies, and it's like that great shaman was the one who trusted the unknown. When you trust the unknown, you allow the moment to happen more than just the influence of the effort of your own attention. So right now when I'm speaking, it's like it's taking all the effort of my attention, but there's certain moments where I feel like more I'm being the whole moment, and the moment is happening in accordance to that knowing, not in accordance to a separated, fear-oriented knowing. So it's as if I trust the world enough to move in it, and I also also trust how the unknown is being unknown enough to be it. And not, well, when I say to be it, I mean to realize it's being everything. That means there is nowhere in the cosmos that is said like the world has to mean anything to us, right? It's as if it's how choices lead to their own symphony of assimilation. Anyways, guys, I think the person in the wallpaper photo of this episode, their trains arrived, so I gotta end the talk. The wallpaper needs to go. But anyways, the idea of the great pilgrimage of inner lives, it's pretty much me saying, all right, human being, like, you're an unknown attention in a knowable world. Try to solve the greater problems that are beyond the foundations of the success of an individual. So that means right now, if I'm like, okay, imagine I had the greatest success in my individual dimensions. Afterwards, I would be like, okay, what about in the collective dimension? And it's as if right now, I would say, the smartest billionaires on the planet should just be trying to advance civilization, as if we're preparing to build a civilization for human beings that are going to be so advanced than us. So right now we require to have the honesty of the highest quality feedback. So imagine like there's a multi-billion-dollar company, right? And the multi-billion-dollar company adjusts its structure, right, in accordance to what's the highest quality experience that a human being can have on Earth. If this was like a filter for a capitalistic empire or a suggestion to it, it would instantly... What I'm trying to say is we revalue the human narrative towards the great mystery that is the destiny of our species. Right? We start being planetary individuals, or I would say the best case scenario, we become universalists in an instant. A universalist is someone who wants to see the advancement of the whole universal sector. Someone who has a planetary mind, they just want to see success and advancement on the planet. For me, I have an interest in all of them. That means I have an interest in considerations of how the unknown it translates into an idea in every moment. It's as if every moment I feel like I'm staring like an eagle. I'm surveillancing my own inner realms. My free will, I feel, in a very sharp and kind of like laser beam vibe, like instantaneous vibe, it has a certainty on how it has already scanned the inner environment. So it's like my body's right now in the outer realms, right? But where the words of this talk is coming from the inner realms, right? And I'm trying to tell the viewers that what is using the inner realms to communicate as an outer entity, what is inspiring that great pilgrimage of an individual to unlock its potential before its exit. It's an unknown user of reality. So from human beings on a rock in the middle of nowhere, we have come to unknown moments of being. But at least one thing we know, and this is out of the honesty of the species, is that it's multidimensional. The ignorance of multidimensionality is equivalent to the ignorance of not wanting to see not wanting to see reality's edge. And I guess this talk can end with me saying to the viewers, wonder about your own eyes until you're wondering about the future of the whole universe. Then you'll realize why I'm giving these Mr.Within talks. I think the only people who can understand why I'm giving these talks are those people who have attempted to wonder about the future's destiny and have come to the realization the most efficient vision is that we are advanced beings. Let's see how advanced we can be, rather than, savage animals in a jungle. Whether the jungle is, an actual jungle, or it's a jungle of language and storytelling. The moment a species or a civilization ignores the unknown, it becomes trapped in a simulation. So the moment mystery leaves your moment, you become sculpted by whatever ideology there is. We are as mysteriously as the world is being here, we are being here. That's the ability of our attention. We are pilots of consciousness. And with the greatest liberation comes the realization that the only thing that is not conditional to change is the changeless. Right? It's like, in another way would be, the only thing that is not changing is change. This whole time, the unknown has been moving a known world rather than the known moving the unknown world. I treat my own mind as, I would say, a tool or an instrument. Do you know? Like when you see a musician sits with the instrument, and based on their comfort and experiences with the instrument, they express themselves. It's hilarious, The unknown is waiting for us to recognize it. The moment we recognize it, we are being it. The moment we are being the whole moment, there is no destiny to a part of it. That means one way of living life is you're an individual in a story. The other way of living life is that the eyes of the moment have the glow of a hidden world. How we are happening is the revelation of our truth, and how the moment is happening is the destiny of our truth, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the nature of the human mind is that you are, poetically, think of it this way. I use this metaphor. Imagine your soul is a general, your mind is a commanding officer, and your body is like the soldiers. So the body is listening to the commanding officer. The commanding officer, for some people, they have discovered the general. For some others, they think they're a commanding officer without orders, right? And the nature of reality is that first they considered it as chaos, which was Chronos, I think. But anyways, that's this idea that the soul is defined by how it brings order to chaos, okay? So the ultimate command for the commanding officer, that means what is the mind using to lead itself? Or where is the true allegiance of one's mind? Like, it's a question like that. And one's mind, it is not just textured by how your attention is being present, but one's mind is what their truest self presents itself in front of. So, it's like, rather than our mind being an individual personality of a self or an Iron Man suit of an idea, our mind is becoming the space where the movement of reality is consciously being noticed, right? So right now, the experience of my mind, like how I'm experiencing my mind, it's like my eyes are open, physical reality is here, but I also, just like I can't see beyond the sky, it's like there's an edge to the limitation of awareness I have, right? So what I mean by this is like, the way I'm experiencing my mind right now is as if it's events happening in an invisible room overlaid right upon this room. My mind is like a dimension overlaid upon reality, where the texture of shape is different than seeing shape with the biological eyes. In front of our eyes, we're human beings looking. Behind our eyes, we are an attention to the thought that becomes us. An inner peace means that this river of ideology, or it's as if you're an antenna and you don't get defined by every wave, but you have the decency to be unknown enough to notice how every wave is being, It's like the wisdom of an ocean and the ability to be a drop as well. How is the idea of self even alive? Like, we understand how the body is alive, but how the brain generates, a consciousness to the present. It's like there's the consciousness is a generation. The content of our mind is based on the content of our world. The content of the mind is the world, right? So to have an analysis of what the brain is doing alone is impossible when the event it's led to is more than just the brain. It's like brain plus world equals personality in a stability world, But the inner world is based on the experiences of the outer world, right? To some degree, the alphabet of a person's ability to visualize or move, or like the beginning definitions of reality, are physical. Like when I think about the earliest memory I have, it's just sight in a room. It's like, the definition of purity is the definition of the absence of context. The moment the species doesn't fear we're unknown beings, and we orchestrate a coordinated conscious strategy, and the archetype I was using of like the soul being the general, the mind the commanding officer, the body the soldier. The soul is the edge of vision, poetically. So it's like the edge of your vision of reality is where the mind is taking its instructions to guide the body, to command the body. The mystery of our eyes is beyond what we have seen. Thanks for listening. Rich blessings. Namaste.